Well, this sucks. Well, it's been a minute since I've posted, but that's not intentional. All of my planned content for the year kind of went out the window when this happened, but we'll get into that in a minute. Really, the main focus for this year was to have driving content and racing content. The past couple years, we spent a lot of time building and fabricating on the car with the LS swap and taking it back off the frame and all that stuff. And we just wanted to get out and see what the car would do. We spent a lot of time trying to make this into a pretty fast pro touring car, so we wanted to see, how fast was it actually? How would it do in competition? And it started off really well. I hosted the event back in April, the Spring Shakedown at Lime Rock, under my company, Gorman Performance Engineering, and it went well. The car took fastest time of day. The car felt incredible, just cornered well, put power down well, braked well. We were blown away, and we figured, okay, we're in for a great year of racing. But really, it just kind of went downhill from there. At the second event we did, which I posted the POV of, it was just a local autocross, also at Lime Rock Park, but in a parking lot there. And the car just felt really weird, like right off the trailer, something was wrong. Where the car didn't put power down well, it felt weird under braking, it felt weird cornering. We knew something was off, and at first I thought the setup was just maybe way too stiff, that I had too much spring in it for the lot we were on. So we softened the shocks as kind of like almost like a ghetto fix to see if that would work. And it felt better, but something felt very strange. And then I think my dad was in the car and I was watching him leave a corner and it was doing a one-wheel peel, and I was like, oh, well, I think we found the problem. So I had ended up peeling the center section, which we have the diff apart, but that's for a different reason that I'll get into later in the video. But it was the beginning of our diff troubles for the year. And it wasn't even a bunch of catastrophic failures, it was just a bunch of, wear and tear on old parts. So we took the diff apart and found out that the center section was just worn. That was like a 10-year-old center section that I think I had put in like my freshman or sophomore year of high school. So like it didn't owe me anything. So we swapped that out, went up to an autocross with the Porsche Club up at Devon's, which I don't know if I posted that video yet or not. If not, I will at some point. It was a super fast course. Car felt great, felt back to normal. And then we went up to UMI Motorsports Park for the Drive Autocross event there, which I did post. And the car was good. We made the shootout. I think I finished 7th overall, which wasn't too bad. We were really competitive on day 2 on the faster course. We were I think we finished like 4th and 5th, and we were I think my co-driver was actually faster than me that day, and he finished like 4/10 off of first place. But day 1 was a super tight and slow course, and we were like a full second off first place. We had nothing, but the car felt good there. But then we heard a diff whine. So then when we got home from that event, we pulled the drain plug and it looked like a Chia Pet with a bunch of metal on it. And if I have pictures of this stuff, I'll put it in as we're going. But so we took the cover off, and the ring and pinion had eaten itself. I think when we put the new carrier in, I set the backlash a little tight. It was within tolerance, but it was on the tighter side. So when it built a bunch of heat, it just ate it up. So a new ring and pinion later, and we were bringing the car to the biggest event of the year that we were doing, which was UMI's Muscle on the Mountain, which was a new event for this year that they're doing. It's like the muscle car only version of King of the Mountain, where it was this prestigious autocross event. Some of the fastest pro touring muscle cars in the country were going there. That's really the event we were focusing on and practicing towards. That was the one where we wanted to have a really good showing. And so, that's why we put so many events on the car. I spent all of last winter really optimizing the setup, and we went to UMI in June for that Drive Optimum event. It was all practice for this event. This was the one that we really wanted to go out and be competitive in. And so day 1 of the event, we're warming the car up in the pits, and literally we get called up to start making our runs. So we fire the car up, we're letting it sit for a few minutes just to get some temperature in the oil and everything. And then my co-driver was strapped in the car, and we just hear this horrible clattering noise. So we're like, oh, shut the car off. And since it was like the second he pushed the clutch in to put it in gear to go pull up to the line, we figured, oh, maybe the throwout bearing or something failed. So we had an inspection camera, looked in the bell housing, everything looked fine. So we're like, that's strange. And so we went to go start it again, and it was locked up on the starter. And that's when we're like, oh, okay, something's probably really wrong here. And so we didn't know what it was. We went and had lunch, and then came back down, took the valve cover off, and I saw a broken rocker arm, which I'll put in a picture of, and I was like, okay, yeah, broke a rocker, whatever. But then I look a little closer and I see the valve keepers are sitting on the head, and I'm like, huh, where's the valve? That's a problem. And so we kind of knew our day was done then. We didn't know what the extent of the damage was, so we pushed it in the trailer and then we left that day. So we didn't even get to make a single run, which was a big bummer. But it was cool to meet some of the people that I've been wanting to meet for a while in the pro touring world. But definitely sucks since I wanted to compete in the event too, not just show up and you know, take 3 days off of work and drive 8 hours out there just to spectate. So we get it home, and it didn't look like this exactly when we got it home, because we figured we'd be a little optimistic and think, okay, maybe just the valve fell in, but it needs to come back out or something like that. And so we started doing the provisions to like take the spark plug out, kind of look in there and see what was going on. And so to get the spark plug out on that side, it's easier just to take the header off. And then when I took the header off, the valve stem fell out of it, and that's when I my heart sank a little bit, and I was like, okay, I think we have a big problem here. And so we went to take the spark plug out, which I'll put pictures of all this stuff again as we're going through, and it was just a pain. I had to almost use a breaker bar. I was using like a 1/2 inch adapted down to just break the spark plug out, and then you could see the end, the threads were all like tapered and crushed, and then the end of the spark plug was gone. So that also made my heart sink. And then we stuck an inspection camera in there, and that's when we knew we're kind of done for the year. So you know, we took the car basically to this state, ripped the fenders and the hood off, and then just pulled the engine out. And I brought it to the engine builder. Literally, this happened on a Friday, and then I brought it to him that following Monday. So it was a quick turnaround, and that's why we didn't film any of the disassembly of the car. We figured, you know, yeah, it probably needs like a piston, maybe the cylinder wall is okay, or maybe just the whole cylinder set needs to be bored out, like 10 thousandths bigger pistons, then we'll be good to go. And so that's why I didn't really film it, is because like, okay, it'll be a quick turnaround. And then we'll be back on the road and racing. But here we are, you know, 2 months later, and the car's still like this. So unfortunately, that was not the case. When Golan Engine got it, they tore it down, and they found that the cylinder sleeve had cracked, which sucks. That's literally worst case. I mean, I guess worst case would be the block breaking, but this was still up there. And so we knew then that the block had to get re-sleeved, and then the year was kind of done. And so I'm filming this in early September, and I just got word a couple days ago that we're probably not going to have the engine back till like October. So the car's done for the year, unfortunately. You know, when I get the engine back, I could slam it together for you know, maybe like 2 or 3 events, but like it's really not worth it. So I figured, I had some winter changes that I was going to be doing to the car. I mean, I had bigger winter plans, but those aren't happening now that I have to pay an LS7 repair bill. That was unexpected. But yeah, I figured it's a good chance to leave the car where it's at right now, as far as how stripped down it is, strip it down a little more, and get going on the winter upgrades. So that was the first part of the video of the tragedy of the LS7. I mean, unfortunately, that's part of racing. It just sucks that it was a GM OEM rocker that broke it just the wrong spot, and then because it broke there, it dropped a valve. Literally, if it had broken anywhere else, this wouldn't have happened. It broke where it did. It pushed on the outer edge of like the valve retainer plate, and then that allowed the valve keepers to come off and then it to fall off. So with that said, I figured I'd, you know, kind of dive into what our winter plans are for the car and what changes we want to make, because even though we didn't get to race the full season, we did get enough data and events to kind of figure out what needs to change on the car and what changes we think we need to make in order to bring it to that next level. The car was competitive off the get-go. I think it depended a lot on course layout, but when the course layout suited the car, you know, we were right there in the mix of, you know, we were in a few tenths of first place on these faster courses. So we know that that's just up to us as drivers to be able to drive better and get it there. But obviously as racers, you know, we want to chase every tenth and have that competitive advantage. So we're going to be making some changes to hopefully make the car even faster than it was this year and come out swinging next year. So the first change is at the back here. And it actually has nothing to do with why the rear end's apart. The rear end's apart right now because we're doing a crush collar elimination kit. So they have these crush collars here for setting the tension in between the pinion bearings, and it's a pain because we've had this thing apart like 4 or 5 times this year already, and we've had to do a new one every single time. So I forget who makes the kit, if it's Mosier or someone else, but we put one in there. So we're just finishing up the install on that. Same thing, I didn't film it because I thought it was going to be part of just quickly getting the car back together to race while the engine was being repaired, but you know, they had a change of plans. But so the first thing we're doing is converting the rear end to a 3-link setup. The triangulated 4-link's been decent, but you can definitely feel it bind and not want to put power down as well as it could when you're cornering. That was a big issue I felt at UMI. The way they had the courses set up, it was like you would come onto the banking and then it would be like not a long straight, but like a medium-sized straight to the finish line. So you already have some lateral force on the car and then you're trying to accelerate, and that's where a 4-link, when it's binding and having issues, can you know, cause problems. And so you know, it has nothing to do with the rear suspension kit or anything. This is as good as you can get, this triangulated 4-link with the ABC kit and the spherical bearings and everything. But the 3-link just opens up the door for a lot better articulation, a lot better performance with the live axle. I thought about doing something like an IRS, but the cost and how limited it would be, because I would want to implement it in the factory frame, kind of just made it not appealing to do. Like, for me, I want to see how far we can take a factory frame. So if I back half this thing to put an IRS in, it's not really a factory frame anymore. So the live axle, I think, is kind of the best happy medium. So we're going to still use this housing and everything. I'm actually going to keep the factory lower arms, and we're going to take off the upper arms and then do a long link. Now, to do a 3-link properly, you really want to have that upper link about 70% of the length of the bottom links. So that means that it needs to come into the cabin. And so that kind of leads into the second point, which is going to be we're redoing the roll cage. Now, well, it's not really a cage, it's a bar right now. This is something my friends and I did in high school. It's not the best. I don't trust my life to it. It's welded to the floor, and it was built for a previous version of the car, and it was okay for that, but it's really not great for this as far as like the harness bar relative to the seat. Like the angle is all wrong and where the door bars are and stuff. So since we have time while the car's down, we're going to cut all that out and just build a cage from scratch. You know, we offered that as a service through my company, and so we want to, you know, showcase what we can do and then build a custom, you know, cage that's tailored to this, and then I'll also implement the 3-link setup in the back of it. But, you know, I'll go into more detail on that once we actually get going on that. As part of the 3-link install, we're going to be doing a Watts link to help keep everything centered. So for those of you who don't know, the part of what keeps a rear end centered on a triangulated 4-link is the angle and the position of the upper arms relative to the lower. Almost creates a bind side to side, so it doesn't move that much. But when you go to the single upper link, which I don't know how well that'll capture it, you lose that. So then the rear end will just move freely side to side, and then, you know, that's problematic. She'll just stuff a tire into the frame or the quarter. And so you need something to keep it centered, and you can do either a panhard bar or a Watts link. A panhard bar is simpler, but you are still going to get it to move and articulate. The Watts link's more complicated, but you know, you get better control of the rear end, but more importantly, you get good roll center control. But I'll get more into that stuff when, you know, we're actually doing that, and I'll explain it then. But as part of the Watts link, and you can see this is a lot of the domino effect. Like, we're making one change and then we have to change another thing because of it, and then change another thing because of that. But you know, you want it to work in harmony. You don't really want to compromise this. But the factory fuel tank, which you can't really see up in the trunk down here, is not going to fit with the Watts link. The Watts link occupies like 6 to 10 inches behind the rear end, and you can see back here that we don't really have that much room. So we're going to be going to a 14-gallon fuel cell in the car, which will be good. I mean, I've tried to avoid it for a while, but safety-wise, as we get more into time attack stuff in the future with the car, but also just fuel control, it'll be better. You know, we run like the baffled Holly tank in this, and like we still had fuel starvation issues even running it at like half a tank. I'll put in the video of when we were doing the Thompson track cross, we literally had like 2/3 of a tank, and in like long sweepers the thing was starving. And I really don't want to blow this up again anytime soon, so I'd prefer to not like lean it out to 20-to-1 mid corner at full throttle. So that's kind of cheap insurance there. So that'll also give us flexibility to run the car lower on fuel and save some weight when we're there. But I think beyond that, I have some cool upper control arm mounts coming. It's a product my company makes, and we're going to be putting the prototype set on this just to, you know, continue to develop and try it out. So when we go to install those, I'll talk about them and what's cool about them and how they're different from really anything else I've seen on the market. And we might make a coilover change off the Vikings. I have Viking triple adjustables front and rear. Actually, I didn't even talk about the fronts on this. That was another fun story. I think 3 days before we were leaving for UMI, I was just kind of doing a nut and bolt check on the car like I do before every big event that we have to travel for. And I saw the bottom of the control arm was like covered in oil, and I'm like, that's weird. And so I shine a little flashlight, and then the whole shock body was soaked, and I'm like, oh, that's not good. So I ripped it out of the car, and I could compress it by hand. You could see the oil pouring out of the where the shaft goes into the body. So I reached out to UMI and said, hey, you guys have any of those Viking triple adjustables in stock, and can you bring them to the track? I'll do a pickup order. And so we literally got to UMI and swapped these in the parking lot of UMI Motorsports Park, which was a hassle. I mean, come to find out after, it threw out the alignment like terribly. It wasn't even close side to side. So I'm surprised the car felt decent at all. But I mean, that's the game of play. You know, when you race it, stuff breaks or just unfortunate things happen. So yeah, that's where we're at with the car. I figured I'd give you guys a little update now that we're actually have a path figured out moving forward. Now we'll be back to more regular content. You know, I was hoping to just post racing stuff, and then the engine blew up, and I was like, okay, I'm not gonna film anything because, you know, it'll be quick. We'll get back to racing and get back to filming that stuff. And unfortunately that didn't happen. So at least now we know definitively the car is done for the rest of the year. So it's just gonna look like this until 2024 now. But we have a path forward. We know what changes we wanna make in the off season. I've highlighted them here, and yeah, we're gonna get after it, which I'm kinda excited to start working on the car again. It's been probably like, I don't know, a year and a half to, I don't know, I'd say about a year and a half since we've really made any big changes. That's how long it's been since we finished the LS7 swap. And I don't know, I like that. I like having projects to work on, especially with this car. It's fun to keep it moving forward. So yeah, that's really everything for this video. Super disappointing, but you know, it kind of happens. I think the worst part of the car not getting its engine back anytime soon is my company's hosting another autocross at Lime Rock, the Autumn Apex, on September 16th. And we were hoping to go back to back and see if we could win both events. I was gonna see if I could win both of the events I was hosting this year. But unfortunately that's not gonna happen now, at least not in this car. So it's kind of a long video of rambling, but I figured I'd give you guys an update as to where I've been and what's going on with the car and why we haven't been racing and attending after doing so many events earlier in the year. But yeah, this is where we're at right now, and probably will be for a little bit. So it sucks, but it is what it is. If anything, it's motivation to bring the car back even faster next year, because it was a really promising start this year. So that's all I have for you guys now. And yeah, I'll catch up with you guys once we actually start making some progress on these changes.